Many different things happened in the 1960s. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about fashion in the 1960s. There are many different things that happened, and you will see things from the beginning of the decade to the middle of the decade and to the end of the decade. The first thing I'm going to talk to you about is the most popular hairstyles. The most popular hairstyle for women was the bouffant pictured on your screen. By the end of the 60s, women's hair was either very short or very long and lanky. Men's hairstyles were pretty much the same. At the beginning of the decade, men's hairstyles were crew cuts. By the middle of the decade to the end of the decade, men's hair became longer and wider, began to grow beards as well as mustaches. They were very popular. In the beginning of the 1960s, women's hemlines were long and women dressed very modestly. In most public places, knee-length dresses were required to wear in public. By the middle to the end of the 60s, the hemlines began to rise and clothing became more revealing. In the middle of the decade, for women, peasant skirts and chunky shoes were also very popular. Beginning in 1960, men's casual clothing was usually plaid and an often button-down shirt in the front. Towards the middle and the end of the decade, men's clothing was brightly colored, double-breasted sports jackets and polyester pantsuits were very popular, and when ties were worn by men, they were patterned and worn with anything. Towards the end of the decade, bell-bottom jeans, love beads, and embellished t-shirts were all considered unisex clothing, which means both men and women wore them. I hope you've learned a little bit about fashion in the 1960s.